Welcome to Peaceful Soul. Today, let's search for the answer to a question that so many people have been asking. When should you see a psychologist? A neurologist? Or a psychiatrist? Imagine this. It's an ordinary evening. You're having dinner with your family. Suddenly, your older brother, who's usually cheerful and talkative, sits in silence through the whole meal. He avoids eye contact, looks distant, sometimes even snaps in irritation for no clear reason. A few days later, he starts staying up late, sleeping less, even locking himself in his room. Naturally, the family begins to worry and whisper, "Is he going crazy? Maybe it's just work stress? Should we take him to a doctor?" This is exactly the kind of situation many families face. When a loved one suddenly changes in personality, behavior, or emotions, the first fear that often arises is, do they have a mental illness? But here's the truth. In medical terms, mental illness, crazy, neurological disorder, or simply stress are not the same thing. And this confusion often causes people to miss the golden window for effective treatment. In my many years of working in healthcare, I've seen hundreds of cases like this. Some people only suffered from anxiety disorders. But because the family was terrified of the word psychiatry, they kept it hidden, refusing to seek help. By the time the illness worsened into severe depression, treatment became far more difficult. Others thought it was just everyday stress, when in fact, it was already showing signs of neurological damage requiring medical attention. That's why, in this video, I'll help you understand the difference between psychology, neurology, and psychiatry. Learn how to tell ordinary stress apart from an actual medical condition. Recognize the right time to seek professional help before dangerous complications arise. Most importantly, I want to shift your perspective. Seeing a psychologist, neurologist, or psychiatrist is not shameful. It's an act of protecting your own health and the well-being of your family. So, stay with me from this very first part, because the answer to the question, when your loved one changes, does it mean they're crazy? May surprise you. Next, let's unlock the meaning of three important concepts: psychology, neurology, psychiatry. When it comes to mental health, many people fall into a big misunderstanding. Anyone who shows a change in personality, complains of fatigue, or has several sleepless nights is immediately labeled as mentally ill, or worse, crazy. But in reality, modern medicine draws very clear distinctions between three fields: psychology, neurology, and psychiatry. Understanding these differences will not only ease your fears when a loved one shows unusual signs, but will also help you choose the right specialist, and that can make all the difference in receiving timely and effective treatment. Let's begin with psychology. This field explores our emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Our psychology can be affected by the environment, work stress, or life's emotional shocks. For example, someone who loses a loved one may feel deep sadness, struggle with sleep, or withdraw socially. This is not a psychiatric illness, it's a normal psychological reaction. However, if such symptoms persist and begin to disrupt work, study, or relationships, that's when consulting a psychologist or therapist becomes important. Now, let's move to neurology. The word may sound similar to psychiatry, but the two are entirely different. Neurology is the medical specialty focused on the structure and function of the nervous system, the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. Conditions such as migraines, epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, or nerve damage after an accident all belong to neurology. Here, the causes are more biological and structural. Imagine a patient who suffers a traumatic brain injury in a car accident and is left paralyzed on one side, with slurred speech. That's a neurological problem, not a psychiatric one. And finally, we come to psychiatry, the concept most often misunderstood and stigmatized. Psychiatry is the branch of medicine that treats disorders of the brain where the main symptoms show up in emotions, thinking, and behavior. Severe depression, generalized anxiety disorder, schizophrenia, or bipolar disorder all fall under psychiatry. A patient with schizophrenia may hear voices that don't exist, believe they are being watched, or behave in ways that severely disrupt daily life. These are not simply mood swings or stress, they are brain disorders that require medical intervention with medication, psychotherapy, and long-term follow-up. To make it simple, Psychology deals with everyday emotional fluctuations. You may need counseling or therapy to cope. Neurology is like the hardware of the nervous system if damaged. A neurologist is needed. Psychiatry focuses on the software, when thought processes and emotions malfunction so severely that daily life is disrupted. Let me share a story. I once met a 32-year-old woman who came to my clinic after months of sleepless nights, constant crying, and a painful belief that she was a burden to her family. Her relatives whispered to each other, could she be going crazy? But after a careful evaluation, I discovered this wasn't schizophrenia. As they feared, it was severe postpartum depression. With a few months of combined medication and psychotherapy, she recovered almost completely and returned to a normal life. This story highlights a powerful truth. When we understand these concepts correctly, we replace fear and stigma with clarity and compassion. And more importantly, we ensure no one loses their chance for early treatment. So, as you can see, psychology, neurology, and psychiatry are three distinct fields with clear professional boundaries. What truly harms patients is not the illness itself, but the confusion, the stigma, and the delay in seeking help. In the next part, I will guide you through the crucial question: when should you see a psychologist? When should you see a neurologist? And when must you see a psychiatrist? So, when should you visit each specialty, psychology, neurology, or psychiatry? In the previous section, we clarified the differences between these three fields. But then comes the practical and urgent question: when should I or my loved one actually see a psychologist, a neurologist, or a psychiatrist? This confusion is very common. In real life, many families find themselves in difficult situations. A child's grades suddenly drop and they become unusually irritable. A mother struggles with chronic insomnia and worsening memory. A grandfather suddenly seems forgetful, confused, or starts saying strange things. But no one knows which doctor to turn to. This uncertainty doesn't just waste time, it can also make the condition worse. Let's start with psychology. You should see a psychologist when you or your loved one are struggling with emotions or behaviors, but the symptoms have not yet reached a severe or dangerous level. For example, a student who feels overwhelming anxiety before exams, heart racing, sweaty palms, and sleepless nights. This is situational anxiety, and a psychologist can help teach breathing techniques, cognitive reframing, and coping skills. Or consider an office worker who, after years of stress, feels increasingly burned out, unmotivated, and easily irritated with coworkers, but can still function daily and has no self-harming thoughts. This is also a situation where psychological counseling is appropriate and effective. Next is neurology. This is where you turn when there are signs that the nervous system, the brain, spinal cord, or peripheral nerves may be affected. Common warning signs include persistent severe headaches, frequent dizziness, uncontrollable shaking of hands or legs, or sudden numbness on one side of the body. For instance, a middle-aged woman began experiencing frequent forgetfulness over several months, misplacing her keys, forgetting items at the market. Her family thought it was just old age, but a neurologist discovered it was an early sign of Alzheimer's disease. Because she was diagnosed early, treatment helped slow the progression and preserved her clarity much longer. Finally, let's talk about psychiatry, the specialty many people hesitate to approach because they associate it with being crazy. But the truth is, not everyone who sees a psychiatrist is insane. You should see a psychiatrist when there are clear disturbances in mood, behavior, or thinking that significantly disrupt life. For example, a young adult suddenly becomes withdrawn, repeatedly says life has no meaning, and even starts planning suicide. This requires immediate medical attention. Or someone begins hearing voices that don't exist, believes they are being controlled, and develops delusions, classic signs of a psychiatric disorder such as schizophrenia. Without timely treatment, these situations can become dangerous for the person and those around them. The most important message here is this: early treatment always leads to better outcomes. If your anxiety is still mild, counseling can help you manage it, but if ignored, it can develop into an anxiety disorder or depression, requiring psychiatric care. Similarly, a small tremor when writing could be an early sign of Parkinson's disease, if treated early. the patient can still enjoy many years of normal life. Think of it this way. Visiting these specialists is like maintaining a car. If the steering feels slightly off, you just need a quick adjustment, psychological counseling. If the engine has a deeper problem, it needs more serious inspection, neurology. But if the engine has completely failed and won't start, it requires major repair, psychiatric treatment. And just like with cars, waiting until the engine breaks down completely will always cost more and make recovery much harder. Don't leave just yet, because up next is an important look at the dangerous misconceptions that keep people from seeking help. When it comes to psychological, neurological, or psychiatric issues, one of the things that pains me the most after years of practice is this: too many patients come to me far too late. They miss the golden window for treatment, simply because they are trapped by misconceptions that seem harmless at first, but are actually deeply dangerous. Today, I want to share with you true stories from my patients. Of course, I've changed their names for privacy, but each experience carries a powerful lesson. Misconception number 1. If I see a psychologist, neurologist, or psychiatrist, it means I'm crazy. A few years ago, I met Sarah, a woman in her early 40s. She was a beloved elementary school teacher, respected by colleagues and adored by her students. But after a stressful divorce, she began suffering from relentless insomnia, constant anxiety, and even moments when she no longer wanted to teach. The saddest part? Sarah endured this for nearly 2 years. She admitted she was terrified of seeking help because she thought, if my coworkers find out, they'll think I'm crazy. The word, crazy, in society, often feels like an invisible life sentence, making people choose silent suffering over seeking support. By the time Sarah came to see me, she had developed severe depression. It took months of combined therapy, both counseling and medication, for her to stabilize again. Her case proves one important truth: seeing a mental health professional does not mean you're crazy. It's an act of courage to protect your well-being. Misconception number 2. I can handle it on my own. I don't need a doctor. Then there's John, a 35-year-old engineer. John prided himself on being independent, always solving problems by himself. When work stress piled up, he turned to alcohol to cope. At first, it was just a drink or two after work. But slowly, it became a dangerous habit. His family urged him many times to see a psychologist or a neurologist. But John brushed it off. I'm a man, I can handle it. Things spiraled until his wife found him drinking in the morning before work. By the time he was brought to the hospital, he was suffering from both anxiety disorder and alcohol dependence, a complex condition requiring long-term treatment. The hard truth? If John had sought help earlier, his journey would have been much simpler. His case reflects what we often call toxic masculinity, or the belief that personal strength can replace medical care. But mental health conditions are just like heart disease or diabetes, they require timely professional intervention. Misconception number 3. Medication will turn me into an emotionless robot. Emily, a 28-year-old designer, came to me exhausted, crying constantly, and struggling with thoughts of ending her life. When I recommended a low dose of antidepressants combined with therapy, she immediately panicked. Doctor, I heard these pills will turn me into someone else, like a robot with no feelings. This fear is incredibly common, fueled by misinformation online and stigma in society. In reality, psychiatric medication doesn't erase your emotions, it helps restore balance to the brain's neurotransmitters, giving you the stability you need to heal through therapy. After 3 months of treatment, Emily regained her cheerful, creative self, and, more importantly, she learned how to listen to and care for herself. Her story reminds us, it's not the medicine that takes away your feelings. It's the illness itself that steals your true emotions. Misconception number 4. If I seek help, people will judge me or look down on me. Finally, let me tell you about Michael, a successful businessman. On the outside, he seemed confident, appearing at public events, signing contracts, speaking at conferences. But behind the scenes, he was battling terrifying panic attacks, often unable to breathe when facing a crowd. Michael hid this for years, terrified that revealing it would damage his image. He only came to me after collapsing during a conference speech. By then, His condition had progressed into chronic panic disorder, seriously impacting his career and health. I'll never forget what he told me after our first session. If I had known doctors are bound by strict confidentiality, I would have come much sooner. The truth is, patient confidentiality is a core medical ethic. No ethical doctor has the right to disclose your private struggles. Through these 4 stories, Sarah, John, Emily, and Michael, we see how different misconceptions share one dangerous consequence. They prevent people from seeking timely medical care. And once treatment is delayed, it always becomes more complicated, more costly, and more painful. The message I want to leave with you is simple. Don't let social stigma or vague fears stop you from reclaiming your life. Seeing a psychologist, neurologist, or psychiatrist is not the end of the road, it's the beginning of healing. Up next, let's talk about the red flag warnings, moments when you cannot afford to wait. In my clinical practice, I often tell patients, there are times when we can wait. Try self-care strategies, or seek guidance from a therapist. But there are also emergencies where even a few hours of delay can lead to devastating consequences. One of the most dangerous warning signs is suicidal thoughts or self-harm ideation. I once treated a patient named Michael, a successful man in his 40s who had silently carried unbearable stress for years. He began saying things to his family like, "None of this matters anymore," or, "Maybe everyone would be better off if I were gone." These aren't casual complaints, they're cries for help. If you ever hear such words from yourself or a loved one, take them seriously. This is the time to go directly to the emergency room or call a suicide prevention hotline. In these moments, the line between life and death is dangerously thin. The second red flag is severe hallucinations or delusions. I remember Sarah, a 28-year-old woman brought in by her family after she became convinced someone had hidden cameras in her home. She grew increasingly anxious, couldn't sleep, and even tried tearing down walls to find evidence. At that point, she could no longer tell reality from illusion, which put both herself and others at risk. This isn't simple stress or anxiety, it's a psychiatric emergency requiring immediate medical intervention. Another critical warning sign is sudden, drastic changes in behavior, mood, or personality. For example, Robert, usually calm and gentle, suddenly became irritable and violent, breaking things and even threatening family members. His relatives assumed it was just work stress. But in reality, such rapid and extreme changes are red flags. They could signal a manic episode in bipolar disorder, an acute mood disorder, or even a neurological condition. When behavior becomes dangerous, delaying treatment puts both the patient and their loved ones at risk. Not only behavior and emotions, sudden changes in cognition are also alarming. Take Linda, a 65-year-old woman rushed to the ER after suddenly becoming disoriented, unable to recognize her daughter, and repeatedly asking, "What day is it today?" This wasn't ordinary age-related forgetfulness. It was a warning sign of possible stroke or another acute neurological condition. Rapid cognitive decline always requires urgent evaluation. Finally, I emphasize that panic attacks with severe physical symptoms should never be dismissed. One of my patients, David, 35, had to call 911 in the middle of the night after a panic attack with a racing heartbeat, cold sweats, and crushing chest pain, so intense he thought he was having a heart attack. The truth is, in the middle of such episodes, patients often cannot tell whether it's just anxiety or a true cardiac emergency. That's why symptoms like fainting, shortness of breath, or severe chest pain should always be taken seriously. Get to the hospital to rule out life-threatening causes first. In summary, the red flag warnings include suicidal thoughts or self-harm, severe hallucinations or delusions, sudden, dangerous changes in behavior or mood, acute cognitive decline or confusion, severe physical symptoms during panic attacks. These are not situations where you can wait, guess, or hope it passes. The most important message I want to leave with you is this: when safety and life itself are at stake, act immediately. Call emergency services, go to the hospital, or seek urgent professional help. Sometimes, timely intervention is the most precious gift we can give to our loved ones or to ourselves. Next, preparing mentally and practically for your visit to a psychologist, neurologist, or psychiatrist? Have you ever felt anxious, or even fearful, about the idea of seeing a psychologist, a neurologist, or a psychiatrist? If so, you're not alone. This feeling is completely normal. In many cultures, especially in Asian communities, and even here in the United States, the idea of going to a psychiatrist still carries a negative stigma. This often makes patients and families hesitate or delay getting help. But in reality, seeking care is far less intimidating than you might imagine. When you prepare yourself, both mentally and practically, the experience can feel lighter, more meaningful, and open the door to healing for yourself or your loved one. First, prepare your mindset. Instead of thinking that seeing a doctor means you are broken or abnormal, try reframing it as a mental health checkup, just like you would see a cardiologist for chest pain or a gastroenterologist for stomach issues. Remind yourself, your brain and your emotions are also part of your body, and they deserve proper care. One of my patients, Robert, shared that before his first appointment, he was so anxious that he couldn't sleep for an entire week. But once he finally met with the psychologist, he realized it was simply an open conversation, no judgment at all. He later said he wished he had gone much earlier. Second, prepare the practical information. Your doctor will need to understand your condition, so write down your symptoms. For example, how long you've had trouble sleeping, whether you've experienced anxiety, stress, or personality changes. If your concerns are neurological, note any tremors, headaches, dizziness, or memory issues. If there's suspicion of a psychiatric condition, record unusual behaviors, like hearing voices that aren't there, aggression, or losing control over your actions. The more specific your information, the easier it will be for the doctor to make an accurate diagnosis. Another crucial step is preparing yourself to share openly. Many patients hold back or hide details out of fear of being judged. But remember, your doctor is not there to criticize you, but to help you. Sarah, a 45-year-old woman, is a perfect example. She first visited a neurologist for chronic headaches. Out of embarrassment, she didn't mention that she also suffered from frequent insomnia and often cried alone at night. It wasn't until a follow-up appointment, when she bravely shared more, that the doctor discovered she was experiencing depression hidden behind her neurological symptoms. If Sarah had remained silent, her treatment might have been delayed for a long time. Finally, prepare for the logistics of your visit. This may include bringing past test results, if you have them, a list of your current medications, and even asking a trusted family member to accompany you for emotional support. This is especially important if the patient is experiencing severe psychiatric symptoms or unstable behavior. Having someone with them ensures both safety and comfort. Visiting a psychologist, neurologist, or psychiatrist is not an ending, it's a beginning. With thoughtful preparation, both mentally and practically, your appointment can become a positive experience, bringing hope instead of fear, and guiding you toward balance and healing. Current treatment approaches, from psychotherapy to medication and combined therapies. When it comes to treating psychological, neurological, and psychiatric disorders, people often fall into two extremes, either expecting that a few days of medication will cure everything, or fearing long-term treatment so much that they avoid it altogether. In reality, modern medicine shows us that recovery is a journey that often involves a combination of approaches, each with its own strengths, and often most effective when used together. First and foremost, psychotherapy is the cornerstone of treatment. This is not just talking with a professional, but a structured process based on different schools of thought, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, psychoanalysis, humanistic therapy, or group therapy. The goal of psychotherapy is to help patients understand the roots of negative thoughts and emotions, and learn healthier ways to respond to them. For example, during CBT, a patient struggling with anxiety might constantly imagine worst-case scenarios. If I'm late for work, I'll definitely get fired. The therapist guides them to challenge this thought, recognize it as irrational, and replace it with a more balanced perspective. Scientific research has shown that after 8 to 12 sessions of CBT, symptoms of anxiety and depression can decrease significantly, especially when patients practice the strategies in daily life. Alongside psychotherapy, medication, pharmacotherapy, plays a critical role in many cases. particularly when symptoms are severe and interfere with daily functioning. For example, antidepressants help regulate neurotransmitters like serotonin to improve mood. Antipsychotics are used in schizophrenia or delusional disorders to reduce hallucinations and distorted thinking. Tranquilizers or mood stabilizers help manage panic attacks or manic episodes. Take David, a 45-year-old patient who suffered from such severe depression that he couldn't get out of bed each morning. He was prescribed antidepressants along with psychotherapy. After several weeks, once the medication began working, David regained the motivation to live, and with his therapist's support, he gradually built a healthier lifestyle. It's important to understand that medication is not a magic wand that solves everything. Rather, it helps restore chemical balance in the brain, creating the stability needed for psychotherapy to be effective. This is why doctors often recommend a combined approach: medication to stabilize symptoms, and psychotherapy to provide the skills and insight needed to maintain long-term mental health. This integrated model has been proven effective in many international studies. In addition, there are complementary methods such as art therapy, music therapy, mindfulness meditation, and exercise therapy. These approaches help reduce stress, improve concentration, and promote natural happiness through endorphin release. For example, a patient with chronic anxiety may be encouraged to combine therapy with yoga and daily journaling, creating a balance of mind and body. Modern science is also exploring advanced treatments for more resistant cases, such as transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, for severe conditions unresponsive to medication, and even virtual reality, VR, technology for anxiety and phobia treatment. These innovations are offering new hope for patients once considered untreatable. In summary, treating psychological, neurological, and psychiatric conditions is rarely about relying on a single method. It's about combining medication, psychotherapy, complementary approaches, and healthy lifestyle changes. Most importantly, patients and families must remain patient and understand. This is a long journey. But with the right approach, meaningful recovery is absolutely possible. The role of family and community in supporting treatment when it comes to psychological, neurological, or psychiatric disorders. One of the most decisive factors for treatment outcomes doesn't lie solely in doctors or medications. It also lies in the environment the patient lives in, namely their family and community. Numerous medical studies have shown that patients surrounded by care, understanding, and support are several times more likely to recover than those facing stigma, isolation, or lack of empathy. Take Sarah's case, a 42-year-old woman who developed depression after losing her job. At first, she kept silent, afraid of being seen as weak or unable to handle life's challenges. Fortunately, her family chose to listen, encourage, and accompany her through therapy. The simple act of a loved one attending therapy sessions with her, or cooking a warm meal, gave Sarah the reassurance that she wasn't alone. In science, this is called the psychological buffering effect, meaning that support from social relationships can significantly reduce the negative impact of stress on mental health. In contrast, consider John, a 25-year-old man with generalized anxiety disorder. Instead of support, he faced criticism at home. "You're just overthinking. Be a man. Stop being so weak." This lack of understanding made John reluctant to seek help and pushed him to hide his condition, which only worsened over time. This is a textbook example of internalized stigma, where patients absorb society's prejudices, blame themselves, and lose motivation for treatment. Beyond family, the wider community also plays a crucial role. A neighborhood support group, a church offering open discussions, or a workplace that encourages mental health breaks, all of these create a supportive ecosystem. In the U.S., many community programs have demonstrated measurable benefits. For instance, a Harvard University study found that patients with schizophrenia who participated in community support groups had 30% higher treatment adherence and quality of life compared to those who did not. From a scientific standpoint, family and community involvement improves three key areas of recovery. Treatment adherence. Patients are less likely to skip medication or therapy when reminded and encouraged. Reduced relapse. A stable, supportive environment helps limit stress, one of the main triggers of recurrence. Better quality of life. Support provides a sense of meaning, allowing patients not just to survive, but to thrive. I once worked with Emily, a patient with bipolar disorder. What stood out in her case was that her family was invited by her doctor to attend psychoeducation sessions, training for relatives on recognizing early warning signs, communicating without conflict, and building stable daily routines. Thanks to this, whenever Emily showed mood changes, her family encouraged her to seek help immediately, rather than waiting for the condition to worsen. This is a prime example of three-way collaboration between doctor, patient, and family. In conclusion, the role of family and community is like fertile soil in which the seeds of treatment can take root and grow. Doctors can prescribe, and therapists can guide, but if patients return to a cold home or society full of stigma, much of that medical effort is undermined. For treatment to be truly effective, we need a broader perspective, not only healing the patient but also addressing the prejudice, ignorance, and indifference around them. Self-care and prevention of psychological, neurological, and psychiatric disorders in daily life. If you've followed along up to this point, you've likely realized one important truth: mental, neurological, and psychiatric health does not depend solely on doctors or medication. It is also deeply tied to our lifestyle and daily habits. Numerous medical studies have shown that small, consistent routines can act as a priceless, preventive medicine. Take Mark as an example, a 45-year-old office worker who suffered from chronic insomnia, anxiety when giving presentations, and occasional unexplained headaches. He feared he might have a serious neurological condition. But when he saw a doctor, he was advised to first adjust his lifestyle, keep regular sleep hours, engage in light exercise, reduce caffeine, and practice deep breathing when stressed. After just a few months of persistence, most of his symptoms eased significantly, without needing medication. This shows that self-care is a fundamental pillar. Below are key steps that both science and clinical experience confirm. 1. Maintain quality sleep. Sleep is the brain's free medicine. Adults should aim for 7 to 9 hours per night, at consistent times. Regular sleep restores the nervous system, reduces stress, and improves memory. Conversely, prolonged sleep deprivation can trigger anxiety, depression, and impaired concentration. 2. Balanced nutrition. The brain eats just like the body. Omega-3s from salmon and mackerel, B vitamins from whole grains, and antioxidants from leafy greens and fruits protect nerve cells. In contrast, refined sugars and greasy fast food increase inflammation and negatively impact mood. 3. Regular physical activity. A brisk 30-minute walk daily is enough to stimulate the brain's production of endorphins, the body's natural, happy hormones. This explains why you often feel lighter and less stressed after exercise. 4. Stress management skills. In modern life, stress is unavoidable, but learning to cope with it is key. Techniques such as mindfulness meditation, yoga, journaling emotions, or simply talking with a trusted friend can give the brain a healthy release valve. 5. Social connection. Humans are social beings. Conversations with friends, sharing within the family, or joining a community group enrich mental life while reducing risks of depression and loneliness. Research shows that people with strong social networks typically enjoy better mental health. 6. Avoid excessive alcohol, tobacco, and stimulants. Many turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism, but in reality, it further exhausts the nervous system. Alcohol can worsen depression, while excessive caffeine contributes to anxiety and disrupts sleep. 7. Proactive checkups. Even without obvious symptoms, occasional conversations with a mental health professional or routine health screenings can help detect early warning signs and allow timely intervention. For illustration, let's revisit Linda's case, a 52-year-old woman who frequently experienced insomnia, irritability, and felt overwhelmed by daily life. Her daughter encouraged her to try yoga and adjust her diet. At first, Linda was skeptical, but as she stuck to the routine and reduced her sugar intake, her sleep improved, her mood lifted, and family life became smoother without sudden outbursts. Linda's and Mark's stories highlight this truth. Daily self-care is the most effective way to prevent psychological, neurological, and psychiatric disorders. We cannot eliminate all stress or life crises, but we can build a resilient mental and physical foundation to withstand them. And remember, self-care does not mean self-treatment. If you've tried these steps but symptoms persist or worsen, seek professional help immediately. Sustainable recovery comes from combining medical intervention with a healthy lifestyle. When we look toward the future of psychological, neurological, and psychiatric medicine, the picture extends far beyond simply treating illness. It represents a profound transformation in science, technology, and, most importantly, society's perception of mental health. In the past, many believed that seeing a psychiatrist meant being crazy. Today, that belief is gradually changing. Advances in medicine and growing public awareness are opening a new door, one where caring for our mental, neurological, and psychiatric well-being becomes an essential part of living a healthy, happy, and sustainable life. Imagine this. In the next 10 to 20 years, artificial intelligence may be integrated into early diagnosis of mental health conditions. Smart wearable devices could do more than measure heart rate and sleep. They might analyze emotions, predict risks of depression or anxiety before you even notice the signs. Patients may undergo virtual reality therapy, stepping into safe, simulated environments to learn how to face fears or overcome trauma. Meanwhile, precision medicine combined with personalized therapies will allow each individual to receive the treatment plan most suited to their genetics, lifestyle, and unique needs. Yet, more important than technology is a shift in how we view mental health. The global community increasingly emphasizes this truth: without mental health, there is no true health. Preventive programs in schools, workplaces, and communities will play a bigger role. Instead of waiting for patients to collapse before intervening, the future of mental health care will focus on keeping people from falling in the first place. Remember, our minds are just like our hearts, lungs, or legs. They need care, nourishment, and rest. A person who has recovered from severe depression can become a living example, inspiring hundreds of others. A family that listens and supports can save a life from the edge of despair. And in a compassionate society, no one should ever be labeled crazy simply because they are silently suffering. Here's the message I want to leave with you, the one watching this video: never be ashamed to seek help. Seeing a psychologist, neurologist, or psychiatrist does not mean you are weak. On the contrary, it is a courageous act, a sign that you love yourself and your family enough to take an important step toward healing. Think of mental health care as you would exercise, healthy eating, or regular medical checkups. Be the first to break old stigmas, and in doing so, you can become a light for your loved ones, your friends, and your community. The future of psychological, neurological, and psychiatric medicine is unfolding, but the key lies in each of us: understanding, proactiveness, and love. And if today you are carrying an invisible worry or pain, know this: you are not alone. Doctors, family, friends, and society are ready to walk beside you. So before you leave this video, ask yourself, how much have I truly cared for my own mental health and that of my loved ones? If the answer feels incomplete, today is the perfect day to begin making a change. My dear friend, mental health is just as important as your blood pressure or your heart health. Don't wait. Don't let fear or stigma prevent you or your loved ones from receiving care and recovery. If you notice unusual changes in emotions, behaviors, or thoughts, seek professional help. One consultation, one conversation, could change the entire course of your life. Please share this video with your friends and family, because they might be the ones who most need to hear this message. And if you'd like to join me in spreading accurate medical knowledge, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Every small action you take today could save a life tomorrow.